Hello and welcome, guys. This is Rafi Chowdhury with RafiChowdhury.com, and today I'm going to be making a simple video that's going to show you guys exactly how you can win tons and tons of chess games against your family, your friends, your peers, essentially any beginner player, how you can win chess games with them against them very easily. So what we're going to do basically is go through a few of the chess openings that we know that exist in chess where you can easily beat someone or that are easy to fall for, or simple tricks and traps and things like that. Not only will this video educate you in understanding what those what those traps and tricks are, but I will also show you guys how to actually prevent these uh, traps and tricks from happening to you. So let's get started. The first one we're going to talk about is the quickest checkmate that there is. It's called a fool's mate. In this opening, white plays a horrible first move, pawn to f3, which simply opens up this diagonal for the king and puts a pawn in a place where the knight ideally wants to go, right? So it makes no sense for a pawn to be sitting here. Black plays a natural and a very good first move, pawn to e5. He controls the center by putting a pawn in the center, and he controls one of the four central squares. So he is following an opening principle. That's a good thing to do. He also opens up the diagonal for his bishop and the diagonal for his queen to come out and develop themselves. In chess, you want to develop your pieces. You want to move them out from the squares that they start from, and you want to put the pawns in the center, in the four central squares, maybe even these two and these two over here sometimes. So after e5, white moves again a very bad move. Just doesn't make any sense at all. He actually plays his pawn to g4. This doesn't do anything to control the center. It doesn't do anything to open up any pieces, diagonals, anything like that either. Maybe you could say that the bishop can develop now to g2 maybe, but it's just a horrible way to do it because it opens up this diagonal to the king. The king is now completely vulnerable. There's just no way this king is getting any kind of shelter from any sort of attack that might come on this h4 to e1 diagonal. And black obviously takes complete advantage of this. And I'm gonna ask you guys, if you don't mind, to pause your video at this point and see if you can figure out the checkmate in this position. Now that you guys have had a moment, I'm going to show you guys this checkmate. It is queen to h4, checkmate. Queen just flies in, takes over this diagonal completely, and leaves the king completely vulnerable, open with a check, and there is no way to get out of this check. So in this position, it is called a checkmate. So what does this mean? Well, this means that there is no way that white can block the check by putting anything between the queen and the king. There is no way the king can move to any other square. Every square he can go to is, still attacked by this queen. There are no white pieces that can capture this queen. This knight cannot capture it. Pawn certainly can't. So this position is called checkmate, and this is one of the biggest traps you could possibly fall for, and just don't fall for it. Just don't make these kind of moves in the beginning. It's a very embarrassing way to lose a chess game. And if your opponent does it, by all means, punish them and win the game in just 2 moves. Moving on to the next one. This one is called a scholar's mate, and this is a very typical checkmate that can happen a lot of times. White plays a normal move like pawn to e4. Black plays a move like pawn to e5. White then develops his bishop to c4, attacking the pawn on f7, putting pressure there. And black just repeats and copies whatever white does. And here white plays a move that's very interesting. Queen to h5. What this does is simultaneously attacks the pawn on f7 and the pawn on e5 at the same time. And black, if they're an experienced player, they will punish this move because technically this move is not a good one. And I'll show you guys in just a second why it's not. But if they're not a very good player, if they're a beginner player, they may see the threat on e5, but they may completely ignore or forget and not see the threat, the double threat from the bishop and from the queen on f7. So what black can do potentially as a beginner is play this move casually, like knight to c6, which actually protects the pawn on e5, but completely leaves this square on f7 undefended and that's where the problem is going to happen. So what white does as an experienced player is goes in, captures the pawn on f7, and delivers a checkmate. And that will end the game immediately because the black king cannot capture the queen. The black king cannot move anywhere because anywhere he goes, he's in check. There are no black pieces that can capture the white queen. So obviously the black king cannot capture the white queen because the bishop actually would threaten the king there. So this is called checkmate, and this is called a scholar's mate. And it only took 4 moves to achieve this checkmate. So how could we prevent this from happening? Well, pretty simple. After e4, e5, bishop c4, bishop to c5. These moves are all great. This is a mistake because this actually brings out the queen a little bit too early, and this queen is going to be misplaced if black plays the proper defense here. The best move that I would recommend here is probably queen to e7. This queen move actually protects the pawn on f7, protects the pawn on e5, develops the queen, and makes this white queen look very silly now. After this, there is no checkmate on f7. So if white plays a more natural move now, like knight to c3, black will simply develop his knight to f6, attack the queen, attack the pawn, and develop a piece, get ready to castle, and white has to move his queen again. I would say probably the best place to put it would be either d1 or maybe even queen to e2 is probably a little bit better because it does develop the queen a little bit. And at this point, I would say black is doing slightly better than white even because white had to waste a turn to move the queen back. And essentially, we have almost the same position, except that black has, has an extra piece that's developed on the king side and is ready to castle. So the other move that you can consider playing in this position over here is actually queen to f6, which not only stops the threat here, but actually creates his own threat of taking the pawn on f7 with the queen or even the bishop. But again, I would prefer the queen e7 move because it does allow the knight to develop on f6 and attack the queen. Now the knight cannot develop there anymore. But white has to obviously stop this checkmate, or this, not checkmate, but, well, it'll eventually be checkmate actually. If white allows a check, king moves over, it'll be very close to checkmate soon. But white has to stop this pawn from getting captured now. So white could play a move like knight to f3 potentially, which does very nicely stop any kind of attacks on the f2 pawn here. But again, even in this position, I think black is doing okay here. Black is probably even slightly better because black will just attack this queen, make the queen look silly over here that's stuck, and black is equalized for sure in this position. But I would prefer the move queen to e7 in that position. All right, moving on to another very interesting quick checkmate, which typically starts with move like pawn to e4. Black plays pawn to e5. White now plays a move such as bishop c4. Black can, in this position, play a move like d6. White plays knight to f3. Let's just say black now plays a move like g6, which aims to develop and fianchetto the bishop over here. White plays knight to c3. And black very casually makes this move, bishop to g4, which pins the knight to the queen and develops the bishop. Looks like it would be a great move, right? Except there's a huge problem here. I will request that you guys pause the video and see if you can figure this out. What is white's best move? Okay, now that you've gotten a chance to pause the video, I'm going to show you white's best move. It's actually, believe it or not, knight takes e5. An amazing blow, amazing blow. And how does this happen? Well, the knight was left undefended, and if black now captures the queen, which is the most normal move, white will give a checkmate by taking the pawn on f7, king e7, knight d5 mate. There you go. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.